about it.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We are talking about the Nashville Community Bail Fund lawsuit. We have with us Mario Hambrick, free at last bail bonding, Jonathan Farmer, attorney with Bone McAllister Norton. Jonathan Farmer is neutral on this, so he has no opinion. He's just helping us understand the legalities of it all. Mario Hambrick well, how would you describe? You're saying this lawsuit, you're opposed to the lawsuit, or tell us again what you're saying.
Basically our position is if you're going to play ball, you need to play by the rules. That's pretty much our position as the bonding industry. As you know, I said, community bonds community bail has been running 4 or 5 years, and pretty much they're acting in the capacity of a bail bondsman, and they're doing what we do, but yet they don't want any responsibility or any rules.
So this comes as cities across the country are really debating how they do bonding, and it's changing. We as a society, we're talking about some changes. The federal system does do things differently. And Jonathan, what would you say? How does the federal system handle this?
So in the federal system, at least in the Middle District of Tennessee, it's largely just an analysis of are you likely to come to court or not, one. And so if you have a history of, like for example, you've been convicted of escape, or you have a history of being a fugitive or something like that, it's going to be difficult for you to say, look, I'm likely to come to court. Okay. And then the second part is, are you a danger to the community, either anybody in the community or the community kind of as a whole? And so again, if you're charged with a particularly violent crime, for example, it's going to be hard for you to say that you're not a danger to the community, or if you've got a history of assaulting people or robbing people or something like that, it's the same. But the federal system, they primarily just look at those two things. Not primarily, that's what they look like. That's what they look at, okay? And then based on that, there's just an analysis, do you pass or not? Or are you able to, are we going to bet on you or not? And while bonds, there's no bonding companies certainly in federal court. It's not impossible for them to say you've got to put up some property or something like that. But in my experience, 9 plus out of 10, if they're going to let you out, they just let you out.
Really, they let you out and there's no money attached?
No money at all.
So they just decide if you're a threat or if you're going to flee?
Right.
If you're not, you're free to go.
Well, and it's not always that simple. So some people, it's just as you described. You're free to go. Mm-hmm. And you have conditions, and it's similar to Davidson County in that, you can't commit another crime. Okay, you can't intimidate witnesses. You got to show up when you're supposed to. Those sorts of things. Some people will have to turn their passport in. Some people will have to report to a pretrial services officer. Some people will have to wear an ankle monitor. So it can go, from virtually no or very little restrictions to, you got an ankle monitor and a curfew, and you got to check in daily. But there's not, there's certainly not a bonding company, and there's rarely, if ever, any kind of financial security involved in that.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about that? Why not do that here in Davidson County?
Well, a lot of judges release people. If the attorney argues, hey, they have health issues or something, so the judge can pre-trial a person, the judge can ROR a person, and as well as the commissioners. So they do that accordingly. And then you have the police, if they get somebody, stop them and they find a gun or something, they can write them a citation. So there's many ways that people are released in Davidson County. There's many ways to be released. Mm-hmm. So,
all right. Well, here we have a call. Let's take the call here. Let's go to Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hey.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
All right. Yeah, I just with the bond system and everything. I wonder, and I guess my position on this is that bonds, the company that bail bonds people, those companies, I've never heard of one of them being unsuccessful at doing it because people bail on them or whatever, and I would hope that I'm in favor of a bond system, and I would hope that bond companies that offer these bonds to get people out of jail would be a little more lenient to the families of those, whoever's convicted or not convicted, but whoever's charged with the crime. And I would hope that, I honestly, give me an idea of how many bond companies go out of business. because I've never heard of it. So I'll leave you with that.
All right, I appreciate that. He's saying your business model is pretty rock solid.
Well, I can tell you in Davidson County in the last year or so, 5 or 6 companies have gone out of business because business is cut almost 75 or 80%. So a lot of people are basically just holding on, just hoping something will happen, that the mayor's office or the council or someone will say enough is enough. And basically, I mean, the city, I mean, if you look at the crime, and I mean, if you watch your news in the mornings and afternoon, the city's out of control. And enough is enough, and somebody's got to say, we need to take a strong look at what's going on.
It's down because of pretrial release, 75%. He says he would like to see bonding companies be more lenient. Can bonding companies be more lenient,
exactly.
Or are you just following what the judge does?
Well, in Davidson County, we have rules and regulations that we have to go by. So if a bond is $25,000 or more, you can't do credit on the bond. So say, for instance, a person says, hey, my bond's $50,000. Can you let me make payments? No, not in Davidson County, because it's against the rules and regulations. So if a bond is under $25,000, then if a person says, hey, I've got $1,500, I can pay you $100 a week, then you can decide to do that. But if the bond is over $25,000, they do not allow you to do credit in Davidson County.
They don't allow you to do credit.
No, sir.
And I think our $2,000 example might be a little quaint. What is the average bond?
I mean, it's depending on the charge. So say, for instance, you take a person who, here recently, all the bonds are low. I mean, you take some murder bonds, they've set $50,000. Here recently, like I said, with the threat of the ACLU a couple of years ago, everything is just is low, extremely low. I mean, you take a robbery charge or something now, it used to be $50,000 or $60,000, now it may be $25,000. So Lil Skippy's done robbed the gas station, and he set a $25,000 bond, and he walks out to jail 2 hours later.
So, and walk me through that process, because I'm interested in this whole process. And let's use a number that is more round, $100,000.
Okay.
So let's say it's a $100,000 bond. How much do I have to put up? Well, how much do you put up? How much do you get paid? I mean, how does that all work?
So if the person's bond is set at $100,000, then they have to get a lawyer to either A, get a bond reduction, or B, have a source hearing. So then they hire a lawyer, they go before the courts and either ask that the bond be reduced, or they have to show a source. Meaning, so, Lil Skippy's mom has to come in and say, hey, I've worked at, NES for 20 years, and I want to use my 10 grand to get my son out of jail. Or, multiple family members has to say, hey, we're wanting, to put in to get Lil Skippy out.
So he gets out with 10%. If it's $100,000, somebody's got to come up with $10,000.
$10,000.
Is that right?
Yes.
10%. If it's $25,000, somebody's going to come up with 10% of that.
Exactly.
$2,500.
Yes.
Right? Okay, good.
And so Lil Skippy gets out, and basically we're on the hook for that $100,000 until Lil Skippy goes to court. So we have to keep up with Lil Skippy to make sure he makes all his court appearances, and as well as dressed appropriately when he goes to court. So we have to say, hey, make sure you're dressed properly, be there early and be in court.
So you put up the $10,000.
Yes.
And then
the $100,000. They pay us the $10,000, and we put up the $100,000.
Okay, so they put up. They give you $10,000. You give the courts $100,000.
We have monies up at the courts. Yes.
And then he doesn't show up. You lose $100,000.
Well, we have 180 days to locate him. So we hope Miss Beatty will say, hey, my son's at his girlfriend's or something or whatever, and we can get him back to court or get it taken care of. Sometimes you take a person, miss court, Lil Skippy, his mother will get the lawyer, and the lawyer will get it reset or something. So we always call the person and say, hey, Lil Skippy, you missed court, and then try to get the lawyer involved and get this situation taken care of. How often do they skip? We have maybe 10 or so a month or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just depends on, usually when it gets hotter outside, and a lot of times the lawyers will say, hey, Lil Skippy, you're going to have to do 6 months on that violation. So a lot of times, Lil Skippy doesn't want to go.
Don't blame it on the lawyer now.
All right. See, that's all very interesting. All right, so we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there's a number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.